presentation at the Selectmen's meeting.
Yes, I did.
Anybody else besides Tom and I? No? Okay. There was some good information on that. I know I have questions, but before I get to questions, I'm wondering if anybody here has comments about what Kathy put together. So, do I see any comments that Kathy did before I go to questions for what she's drawn up? No? Okay.
Well, I do have a question, and it's just having not read the entire, by the way, thank you for coming. Sorry.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much. She refers to the draft RPP and some things that are changed and missing, and land use vision map is one that she brings out several times in her note. Things that are omitted from the RPP, how do towns know that things are now not included in the there are several items like this that Kathy mentions that may affect Yarmouth in particular. But
those are the kind of questions.
We got presentation about what's in it, and I did take a little bit of effort to look at your recommended actions at the end.
Great.
Although I'm sure those will be informed, however the document progresses, that those recommendations might change over time. So I did have a question about the land use vision map. Is it specifically noted that it's excluded, that we should drop it in the plan? Or is it just not included?
I guess you're not using your mic there, Joe, or it's not close enough. Is it on?
Yeah, it's on.
Okay, we're getting banging already. We have at least one viewer at home who has called or texted in to the people behind us saying, we can't hear that lady. So there we go.
All right, shall I repeat myself? I'll be more brief.
Summarize.
The draft RPP, cited by Kathy's memo, refers to the land use vision map. Maybe you can address what's happened to our land use vision map.
And just to dovetail on that, what I just passed out, knowing that some of the planning board members are newer and weren't around in 2009, I think, when we did the land use vision map, I sent down a copy of what is the land use vision map. And I'm going to share one with these guys.
Sure. So I can start, and then Heather, feel free to add in. So the land use vision map hasn't been omitted. It's being replaced by what we're calling Cape Cod place types, which is it's a different approach. It's a areas that have similar natural and built characteristics that we've identified, some of them through GIS, and others will be informed during development of regional impact review. So it isn't that it's been omitted, it's being replaced by this other, it's a conceptual approach that we're replacing it with to both planning and our regulatory review. And that will be applied across the Cape. So I know you've had some questions, or she had questions about the land use vision map. So there are three of these place types we have identified. So if you saw the presentation, or even if you haven't, they range from the least developed, which we're calling natural areas, to the most developed, which are community activity centers, industrial activity centers, and military and transportation areas. So the community activity and the industrial activity and the natural areas have all been identified using GIS, and they simply identify what's existing on the ground today. These clusters of community activity, business activity, and elements of good form. And that's as a starting point. It doesn't negate the planning and zoning work that you've done through your the planning board and other boards in town, and it doesn't negate I know you have a growth incentive zone for a good portion of what you identified in 2009 as economic centers. So it doesn't negate or do away with that growth incentive zone. I don't know if you want to add anything, Heather.
No, not at the moment.
Okay.
Okay.
So Sharon, the areas that are identified on the land use vision map, kind of a lot of our focus has always been historically on Route 28. So, and our understanding with the land use vision map before was, I think it was taken in conjunction with the Chapter H stuff, where you could raise and lower thresholds. And so kind of will that, you know, the redraft of the RPP afford those same types of possibilities on places like Route 28, in places like White's Path, in places along Higgins Crowell Road?
Well, let me first start by saying that one of our actions, so you noted that you've read the actions in the draft plan, is that we'll consider regulatory changes, but not right now. It would be subsequent to the adoption of the regional policy plan. And so we're not proposing to wholesale raise or lower thresholds or make any regulatory changes through the regional policy plan. We will look at those going forward as part of really probably a rewrite of our other regulations, our enabling regulations. We can also look at the Chapter H regulations as well. But it will be going forward, we'll be working individually with towns on what their desires are for these areas, both your areas along Route 28 as well as the areas that we have identified through GIS. And also through your local comprehensive planning process. So think of it really as a vision. And that's what the RPP, the Regional Policy Plan, is supposed to set a large overall framework for planning and regulation. But the specifics in terms of how you go forward with Route 28 planning, we'll continue to work with you, and it doesn't stop any planning work that you've done or completed to date.
Thank you.
Hope that's helpful.
I've got questions, but I will, we start at that end. Tom, do you have questions, Mr. Barron, before I move toward me?
Not at this time.
Okay. Lee, do you have any questions you'd like to bring up about the process going forward?
Yes. Just one, and that is, when do you think we'll have your vision map or your place types?
They're already available. So they're actually, instead of being in the plan itself, they're going to be a part of our technical bulletins, so the technical guidance that assist applicants in the development of regional impact review. So, but they're also, we provided Karen and Kathy with what we're calling a story map that walks through the process of how we identified those areas, and that's available to all of you if you'd like to take a look at it. It just tells the story visually and in words how we identified these areas.
Is that on the website, the Commission's website?
Yeah, if you go to the RPP, so you land on the Commission page, there's RPP update link on the right. Click on that, and then on the right-hand side, again, there's a link to an interactive map or viewer, I think it is called, interactive viewer.
And there's a lot of information there.
Yep.
A lot of information in it.
Yeah.
It's a fun presentation. It really is.
It walks you through how we went about identifying these areas.
And then you can drill, you can drill down and see what, some of the things are that they mapped and the different categories of data that you used. And it's...
Yeah, so you can zoom in. You could zoom into an individual parcel if you wanted to, or zoom out and take a large view of it. So it's kind of fun to use and walks you through every step of the process that we took in identifying these areas. So the three that I mentioned, the natural areas, community activity centers, and industrial activity centers, are all included in the story map, and how we develop that is available for you.
I guess my concern was that Town of Yarmouth, their master plan is quite out of date. And our planner had indicated that we were waiting for the RPP. So now we have the RPP, but really, I don't know if your RPP really gives us a master plan. It's kind of like you're giving us what we have today and what we have, place types and so forth, but it really doesn't seem like it sets any goals.
Well, there are goals and objectives for, I don't know how many different areas, there are many.
14.
14, thanks. I've lost count. So there are goals and objectives that guide the planning and the regulatory review. And again, it's a regional plan, so we're addressing 15 communities. But on your point about your comprehensive planning, we are intending, and it'll either be available hopefully very shortly after the adoption of the regional plan, a new set of guidance and materials for development of your local comprehensive plan. And that should really, and it's designed to be much more streamlined than our current process and our current regulations. So that will provide a lot more information for you in guidance for you in either amending or updating your plan going forward. It's going to be a much simpler approach than what we've had in the past. And we'll have templates, we'll have information data for you that'll assist you in developing that plan. So there's more to come. This is like the umbrella, and then a lot of little raindrops coming after that.
All right, so basically what you're saying is, here's a regional plan, here are the types of developments that we should be looking at, and it's up to the town of Yarmouth now to update its master plan and sync it with what you're suggesting we should do.
Precisely, yes. That's the idea. And we recognize that the local comprehensive planning process in the past, it's been there's such a high level of detail that we were requiring. It really was providing a barrier, or putting a barrier in the way of towns doing those plans. And that's one of our major goals of this plan, is to encourage more towns to participate in that process and do the local, because that's really where you know your town best, and that's where really the visioning and for your community has to take place, is in your town, and not really at the regional scale for us to tell you how what your vision should be for your community.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
No questions at this time.
Yes, I believe you've answered my concern, and that was the VCOD that we have spent a lot of time on, the 4 villages along 28, and the possible impact that the RPP would have on it. And when we were going through that process, we also talked about a vision of redeveloping from Winslow Grave Road down to the Hyannis line. And for years and years, we talked about the possibility of a medical district from the Hyannis line coming out for obvious reasons. So I was just wondering if a developer came forward and was looking at a project within that area, the Hyannis line to Winslow Gray, would he be able to go through our normal channels, or would the RPP reflect anything that would hinder his ability in the future, or her ability?
It wouldn't hinder a development. And maybe you might want to step up and speak a little bit.
I probably should have used regulations in place rather than hinder. Sure.
So one thing that this proposed plan is, as I mentioned earlier, has goals and objectives that guide the planning and the regulatory review. And then these 14 technical bulletins provide a lot of detail to assist an applicant in meeting the goals and objectives, provide a variety of ways that they can do that, and they're based they're based in part on these place types. So it's really where your project is located, designing it to fit the location, rather than 200 minimum performance standards that apply to all projects regardless of where they are.
But is that mandatory criteria?
There are a variety of methods, so there's like alternatives, choices.
Good.
Some are you must do this. There are some that are musts. But there are not that many of them, and
Okay.
there in a lot of areas there are a lot more choices of ways an applicant can meet the goals and objectives. So we think it's a more flexible approach than what we've had in the past.
Thank you.
Do you have it?
Yeah, just along those lines, so and I don't know if I'm interpreting right, Tom, but, so developments of regional impact then, that happen, that's still, those are still identified in the development of impact regulations,
Yes.
right? So will those change to kind of adapt to the technical bulletins?
Do you mean will the thresholds change?
Yeah,
Not immediately.
okay.
The thresholds at the present time will remain the same. However, the RPP does identify as an action item the potential to evaluate threshold changes in certain areas. We're, just to elaborate on that for a moment, the idea is to acknowledge that Cape Cod is very different from one end to the other. There are subregions, and something that might be considered a DRI in Truro might not be here.
Right,
Right.
thank you.
Well said. Thank you for being here. My comments are more chicken and the egg, and I've got compliments coming out of me, I've got questions coming out of me, so may I'll come out like one big vowel movement. So I apologize in advance. I have seen Dave Kellogg and Terry and Karen and Kathy pull whatever hair they have out. And going bald, I'm mostly attached to hair. The amount of time they have to put doing these RPPs is staggering, as you know. Conversely, the commission, since Paul Neswicki took the throne, has been very user-friendly. You've worked very hard to work with the communities. You have exceeded yourself in places that I have seen, Main Street Corridor, helping us here on our areas as well. So I can see the pull. Every time the planning board gets compliments for changing the exit 7 interchange with stoplights, Georgia Lair and I would look eyes at each other and smile because the planning board didn't do anything. We got a $500,000 check from the commission through Home Depot as part of their process to get situated, and that logjam we had at exit 7 has been eradicated forever, and tourists and business people have no problem anymore getting off our main highway. So there's a lot of great things that have come down the pike over the decades. My question is, Yarmouth has got hardly any land left that we can build on unless we chew up a golf course, do whatever. We need a sewer system. So at what point are we doing the chicken and the egg here, where we need the sewer system before we can really do a lot with this, or do we do a lot with this and hope the sewer system comes in? So I'm wondering how far down the road we can football, because in my time here, I've never seen us pass this entire process. How many planned parts have we had at one point? 8, 9? We've never had all of them at once to bring to a vote. We've never.
I don't know off the top of my head.
And I'm afraid to do that. I was asked about that, if we'd have to bring each amendment back to town floor to pass, and then pass the whole thing to get our dollars from regional impact fees. But that's a question for another day. How soon does this have to be done? Since right now, we have a planner who is dealing with something more important than business. Her family is under a lot of stress, so her time is maximized. Is there a leniency period here that we can ask for, that we can, what is the drop dead date on this?
So what are you talking about, comments or?
Are you
No,
talking about the LCP?
On the LCP.
Oh, there's no requirement, actually, to do an LCP.
So we can still operate like we're operating now.
There's been carrots.
Okay.
So there's been carrots. 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 So the I'm sorry,
The-
kind
yeah.
of incentives.
There are incentives to do it. We certainly support communities doing their LCPs, and that's why we're revising the regulations to streamline it, as Sharon said, streamline the process, hopefully get more communities to a place where they feel they're able to bring a LCP forward, seek commission consistency. Sharon touched on a couple of the things that we're trying to do, but in addition to the regulations is data, and make that available to communities.
Is there any community that's passed the entire LCB process?
Yes.
There have been many, many communities. Most of the Cape Towns have a local comprehensive plan in one form or another. Not all of them have been certified by the commission as consistent with the regional plan. So that is something we're striving to improve and increase the number of towns that, as you said, sir, line up the local plan with the regional plan. That's our goal. And also to assist you with preparing a local capital plan that'll help support development in areas that you want to increase or, redevelop as it will. So it all kind of ties together. And there is no time frame for the local comprehensive plan. It's really when the community is ready and interested in doing that. We do, like I said, hope to have new regulations in place shortly after the first of the year. So that I know we have some towns that are anxious. They're already in the process, and they're anxious to be consistent with the plans. They want to know what the requirements are going to be.
Okay. A couple basic things. Is there any point where these new place maps are going to trump our local zoning?
No.
No? Okay. Is there going to be, in the old days, it was for everything you do over here with extra development, you take away development from another place. So we bought land on 28, we took down buildings, we opened vistas in an effort to balance the yin and the yang. Is that still the main threshold mover for if we want to do something on Winslow Gray down to 28, we have to take back some open space, create open space in another part of town?
I think you're
It's-
referring to growth incentive zones and offsets.
Yeah.
Yeah, those regulations were actually changed, I think it was earlier this year, and they eliminated offsets in favor of more of a performance measure approach. So there's a completely different framework for a growth incentive zone now than there was in the past.
Okay. And
With regard to an individual development of regional impact that the commission might review.
well, that's another ball of wax.
Yeah, okay, I didn't know if that's where you were going. Okay.
No, we've only had one of those in what, the past decade? Was it Davenport? Was there anything else I missed? Oh, Maple, right. I can forget the Mill Hill Club. Silly me. That was a good one. Okay. So I'm asking you through them. When we last did this in, 2009, 2010, something like that,
2009.
we had areas of town where we said, let's build up this area and let's give extra weight to this and lower this down here. Is that still something we're trying to do?
Well, I mean, I think I'm going to turn it back at you. It's a planning board direction. And I think that since 2009, what have you done? You have focused on Route 28 and as Tom mentioned, the Village Centers Overlay District. So you've picked a smaller swath where you're focusing. The question is, would you still be interested? And the purpose of this was, and you guys should correct me because it's a long time ago, with Chapter H, we could raise thresholds in certain areas and decrease thresholds in areas that we wanted to do that. And so the question would be to the planning board, those are areas where raising thresholds, up around White's Path, Station Avenue, and over in West Yarmouth around Higgins Kroll Road, if it depends what you're thinking.
We also don't have a sewer system, though.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
it's
you
just,
can't, I think that one of the criteria of the changing of the threshold is demonstrating the infrastructure capacity in terms of wastewater and in terms of traffic. And so we're not quite there.
So now we're back to what I started with about 9 minutes ago. It's the chicken and the egg. I mean, we really can't promise wastewater reduction until we can have something even in a planning stage.
No, but I think that could be used to inform the wastewater planning process.
Yeah.
Right,
Good point.
exactly.
So-
Yeah.
Well, we know where the spine's going to be,
It's
but
hard.
okay.
I mean, I mean, you guys get it. Like, nothing's ever this, then that. It's always all at once. So, like, and you try to focus best you can.
Just through you to the ladies, what's the status of GIZ?
Of the growth incentive zone? So we extended it, and I don't know if you guys are going to remember.
5 years.
No, we went 4 years, and I think it would extend through 2022, 23 maybe.
And does the RPP have any impact on that?
Those are the regulations.
No, it's a separate, that was a separate designation through, sorry to sound so bureaucratic with all these regulations, but it's a separate set of regulations.
Yep.
So, no, that, and again, nothing in the regional policy plan update negates or undoes
Okay.
that designation.
We talked about that in the past. There's 2 or 3 properties that we're going to talk
Yeah.
about taking off and then
Yeah.
adding some properties.
And, I mean, I think that it'll be, and I don't know if this is an action item that's coming up. I do know you just, kind of recently in the last year or so, revised the growth incentive zone regulations. So I think that kind of going forward, if we're looking at revising our existing growth incentive zone or creating a new one, it will be subject to the whatever current growth incentive zone regulations are in place. And that as well may require the demonstrated infrastructure capacity
Right,
as
right.
well.
That's good.
Yeah,
Thank
so, yeah, there's nothing from preventing you from looking at that tool as a possibility for one of these areas if it's appropriate.
I mean, just for you guys, because I feel like I had a kind of epiphany looking at this stuff. And you have regulations, and that's one group of things. And then we have the regional policy plan, and that's where the goals and actions are going to come. And then you're going to have this technical guidance. So it's really 3 groups of things that have different planning implications.
That's correct, right. The technical bulletins are really geared to development of regional impact
Right.
applicants and projects. There was a lot of discussion about shouldn't they be planning-oriented as well, and we're really focused right now on making sure that applicants for, development review have a clear path of how to meet the goals and objectives. So that's sort of priority number 1 on the regulatory side.
And one other thing I'm taking just from this conversation, and we've arranged to have a kind of staff meeting with Kathy as well, so thank you for more than one meeting. I mean, I'm hearing pieces that are part of the regional policy plan that are really kind of initiatives, not just for the towns, but also for the commission.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of work in there. So,
Yes, there is, yeah.
Yeah.
If you look at the actions, I mean, we don't have, 100 of them because we wanted them to be things that we
Doable.
knew we could achieve in 5 years. And it includes a regional housing strategy, a regional capital plan. Those are a couple of really big
Those are big
items
lifts.
for us to undertake, as well as looking at thresholds and other things. So, yeah, there'll be a lot of work going forward.
On the subject of the regional capital plan, how do you envision building that kind of a plan, and how would solicitations of projects go forward, and would you have size meaning very large capital projects like wastewater or airport redevelopment or any host of a new bridge that we might possibly need as a fan of bridges? Things like that, or have you identified kind of, I know it's one of your recommendations and it didn't have a lot of meat in the wording, and I think it's new. Has the commission done this before?
No.
No.
It's actually called for in the Cape Cod Commission Act to do capital planning. But this is the first time we're really going to undertake it, and I think we're going to start with at least identifying the needs, so the regional needs, and limited to a few areas that we have data for. That's part of the problem on the Cape is available data in certain areas. So it isn't probably going to cover the universe of capital planning, but focus on some key areas that we have good information on and we know we could tackle as a region, and then help the towns as well kind of line up their local capital plans with the regional plan. But we haven't started it yet. Actually, attending a meeting next week to start working on it, but it's early in the process.
So are you thinking that you would develop your own set of possible capital infrastructure projects that the data directs or the metrics might direct a need towards, and it would be outside of a master list that every town has now? Every town has got a 20-year
Right.
capital plan, or at minimum a 10-year plan.
Right. I'm sure those will be, I mean, we haven't, like I said, we haven't really undertaken the effort yet. So we won't be doing something in isolation from the towns. But I would guess I was just trying to say we're going to try to identify what we need as a region in terms of capital and infrastructure, and do an assessment sort of the first time around, because we haven't done that before.
I would recommend as you go forward with that, that you find some resources that can help you define
definitely.
what a good plan is.
Yes,
And how you develop it.
We have been looking at, yeah.
And there are lots of people around and who, but, professional consultants and the like, because there are very bad capital plans out there. And it takes some time to, if you're going to start one right from scratch, I would recommend you, if you can.
For sure.
Find some people who understand, what makes up a good one, makes it, buildable is a key thing.
Right.
I think it needs to be buildable.
Yeah.
And I presume DOT MassDOT would be involved in
Oh,
part
sure.
of this, and the TIP, and all the TIP projects.
Well, so there's
There's a lot of places where.
there's another plan called the Regional Transportation
Transportation
Plan,
Plan,
and
yeah,
that
so
is
look at all the
that
TIP stuff.
update is underway right now too, and that the TIP feeds into
Yep.
that. So, but yes, we're open to any suggestions, and we're just really just taking a first
I
look
think
at
it's a
that.
good idea.
Great.
I think it's a very good idea that there be a comprehensive look, because sometimes things like our experience with wastewater, and I think we're approaching it just the right way. It doesn't end at a town boundary line. It doesn't
Exactly.
end at meets and bounds. It ends where it ends, and wherever we can find ways to collaborate with our neighbors, it'll be much better.
For sure, for sure.
I'm glad that Joanne brought up the word bridge, because there's
It's my favorite thing.
There's need for another bridge across the canal, and that's certainly a regional focus. But again, how is the idea of of the plan that you're trying to develop? How different is that from the regional transportation plan, from the TIP program? If you can do anything to expedite the performance of either or both of those, would be most helpful. The state is moving exceptionally slow, and we wait interminably to get these things done. They are forever on the books, but we never see them come off the books. That type of thing needs to be brought better into focus. Timing is of the essence. Planning is wonderful, but you've got to be able to have an implementation schedule as well. And that implementation should not be to the next century.
We hope not.
I have one more question. Does anybody else have a question for the professionals here from the commission? Karen, do you have anything? Okay. I just have one because I missed this part of the presentation the other day as selectman. What is the, I don't want to say designation, that gives it wrong. going to go back a number of years, and I'll give you an example, and you can tell me how this came up. When Blockbuster was opening their stores on Cape Cod, they would almost invariably put a 7-mile ring around every store and try to see how many trips they could generate from that area and then build from that schism. How did you come up with the definition of a community activity center to place it where you did in Yarmouth? What made it check the boxes to say this is what it is?
Either one. Yeah.
Well, I'll start off, I guess. I think very different from your Blockbuster scenario. We had a number of criteria in 3 different areas that we conducted a GIS analysis through. So the first had to do with community activity, and we had a number of things that defined what constitutes community activity, the presence of libraries, schools, town halls, civic buildings, et cetera. And this is all described in that interactive viewer story map that we mentioned earlier. So
I go
you
to
can
the
go,
upper
you can-
right-hand corner of the drop down of the.
Yep,
Okay.
and click, and then go over to the right and click, and yeah, it'll explain it concisely. We spent a bunch of time trying to make that clear. Okay, so you've got community
building.
activity, and then we did a similar analysis for business activity. Where is there a concentration of business activity? And the parameters for that, how close the businesses are, and et cetera, are explained as well. And then we had an analysis for good form. So this has to do with how buildings relate to their site, relate to the street. Is it pedestrian friendly? Where is parking located on the site? And then how do these buildings relate to one another? Is there a concentration or a density within an area? So that constituted, those criteria roughly, constituted good form. And then we overlaid these areas and looked at the areas where you had all 3 come together. And the areas that have been identified as activity centers on the map met all 3 of these. There was a concentration of these criteria in all of those areas. And then we put a 1/4 mile, which is considered walkable, buffer around those areas.
And a different analysis was done for the industrial activity centers. So it was based on a combination of available land for industrial use, the absence or presence of natural resources such as wellhead protection areas, that type of thing, whether it was already zoned for industrial use, and some other criteria. So it was a different process for the industrial, but that's spelled out in that viewer as well.
So on the place type maps, is there room for towns like us to suggest a different boundary for a particular placemat that the data generated, the 3 layers and overlaid and put down and said that's a particular kind? But I think in Kathy's reading between the lines, that our intention for more of Route 28, not just a single area of it, because it's trying to move towards commercial and residential and community and library and get everybody all together like a village. Is there room to move the boundaries on how we might think we would define the place?
So the plan proposes the locations of the community activity centers that we've identified. We recognize that there may be some areas that I think Kathy said aspirational. So one of our actions is to be able to track the activity centers themselves and as they change over time, and as well as other areas. So if you change zoning or you get more concentrated development in an area, those patterns are going to change over time, and so they could become activity centers over time. So it's meant to evolve as your community evolves and you make changes to direct your growth where you want it to go.
Okay. Anything? Nope. Anything else? I thank you for taking off time. I know you have a busy day, and it's always grateful to have you spend past your bedtime, for lack of a better term, coming out
Not
at
quite,
this time of
but-
day or night.
But thanks for having us. We
Yeah,
appreciate
thanks
it.
very much.
Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Do you have? Okay, we're doing that right now. Okay. We're going to move back to agenda item number 1, lot releases for the definitive sub. And I
So Kathy's included a memo here.
read that. Do you want to come down? Yeah.
That one. Kathy prepared a memo. It's the first item in your packet, and it's regarding the request for a covenant lot release. It seems that it seems like an oversight, and that this lot release
By
just
50
didn't
years.
happen when all the other ones did happen in the neighborhood. So Kathy's put together some supporting materials. The original request from attorney Mazzeo, the subdivision plan, and you can see that it's lot number 6, which is just in terms of orientation, it's at the very bottom of the page. You can see that it was left out. There's some additional correspondence from then town engineer John Newton regarding the lot releases that did happen, which all left out lot number 6. So Kathy's made a suggestion to the board that there be a motion to release lot number 6, 28 Saturn Lane, from the covenant for definitive subdivision plan number 1833.
Before I go to the board and entertain any questions or comments or motions, could you please introduce yourself?
I'm Tracy Shaughnessy. I actually represent the estate of John today, so I am not the real estate closing attorney who could not be here tonight. But we did want someone here on behalf of the clients, so.
Very good.
And I think Karen provided you with a lovely summary of the problem.
Yeah, it was unique. I looked at the date, and I didn't expect to see, the year the Red Sox had the impossible dream. I'm like, what? What? Hold on. Okay. Anybody have any comments or questions for Tracy?
No, pretty straightforward, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I don't see any. Karen, any of the comments before I call for motion?
Nope.
Okay, call for motion.
I move that the release lot number 6, 28 Saturn Lane, from the covenant for definitive subdivision plan number 1833.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any comments? Seeing none, calling for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? There we go. Tracy, you're in luck. 50 years later.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
everyone.
And Tracy, I think that Kathy communicated, we'll prepare a formal lot release document and let you know when it's ready. You're going to have to come in, Brad, to sign it.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you. Thanks for waiting for a few minutes for
Oh,
the
no
commission.
problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Moving from the big picture to the small picture, coming up on our annual town meeting. We have some agenda items in front of us, and again, Kathy's gone above and beyond for items that we've been talking about over the weeks. I apologize, I wasn't here on October 17th. Karen.
Dock your pay.
Yeah, I tell you, and the overtime that goes with it. Did Karen leave? Did Kathy leave anything else that was not on this that I'm missing?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, let's just take it one at a time. Put my cheaters on here for a minute. Everything going crazy.
So it's the memo precedes all the edits, the edited version of the bylaw.
Oh, speaking of minimum lot size, I got this from Arnie. These are lot sizes in the town of Yarmouth. When I got it from them, I looked at it quickly and assumed the top number 13 was adding all of them up. It is not, of course, once I got home and looked. I'm assuming that the number 13355 is land somewhere in Yarmouth that still hasn't been developed. That seems like a lot, but I guess if you divide it down into building lots, maybe not so much acreage. And then the amount of lots under each square footage there is noted. I know we've been talking about lots of 10,000 square feet, so at least we now know in town, less than 10, we have 2,600. Greater than 10, but less than 15, we've got another 10.7, so we've got a good chunk of Yarmouth with very small yards. Okay. Let's just tackle this on the red highlighted.
Some help?
Sure, if you
Okay,
we
so
should go through
the first
red
item
line.
was the accessory dwelling units.
I'm going to go through the red line, okay.
And the proposed amendments, Kathy does a good job just giving you a reminder of where you've been with this. The proposed amendments are really just to add some flexibility to people who have or want to have accessory dwelling units here, and it would remove the requirement that the unit be limited by the requirements to include the unit on the subsidized housing inventory. So it provides landlords with a lot more flexibility in terms of renting their units. It would remove kind of the requirement that you need to have a lottery to fill your accessory dwelling unit. She's added some other new items regarding the size of a kitchen, the amenities that the kitchen needs to include, and also making note, and I think it's part of state code, that accessory apartments have access to a washer dryer on site. And I think that's something that, Tom, you can back me up. I know that's something that the trust and the housing committee look for regular. I think it's part of your housing standards now.
It's a must.
So.
Yeah, yeah. My only question about the elimination of the lottery, that right now is a very popular means of opening up access to folks who are in need of housing. So are we, has this been endorsed by Mary Wagon?
So, well, Mary's been very involved through all of this. I think that when you guys arrive at some conclusion here, for at least for now, that it should go to, I don't think it's been reviewed by the Housing Committee. I think that they did meet, I know Kathy and Mary went to meet with the Affordable Housing Trust early on in the process, probably at the beginning of October. But I think, Tom, in terms of availability, these are units that come on kind of one at a time. Our strategy is always to have lots of different ways to create the housing, and so we will have that availability that you're talking about. I think that this may encourage additional supply by
Right.
homeowners being able, it's homeowners who have the unit right there in their house, and I think that it's appealing, and it may encourage additional units to be able to pick your tenant kind of more easily with fewer restrictions. So.
Yeah, we had a recent example, however, in proceedings in the zoning board of an attempt to create a family unit, and the owner was not willing to comply with the regulations, and the item was rejected. There was plenty of room. There was plenty of, but the owner would not comply with the conditions that were normally expected.
Right.
So it goes on the other side of the equation too. Some that are willing to do it, and others that are not.
Well, I think that's a big factor in this, amending this bylaw.
True.
eliminating the affordable housing restriction goes a long way to obtaining more units. It makes the homeowner feel more comfortable, not restricted.
Right.
And there's also another term that they use, certificate of compliance, which gives all the pertinent data relative to the agreement.
It's just they won't count on that subsidized
Right.
housing inventory.
Exactly.
The next jump up is back to the 10,000 square feet, which is memo item number 2, also highlighted in yellow on your red-lined page in your packet. This is the thing that's going to draw the most attention on town meeting floor. So this is the one we should discuss almost the most fully, for lack of a better term.
Talking about 407.21?
About 4, 10,000 square feet. It's highlighted in yellow.
Okay.
That's the one that's going to cause the people to say, I like it, or no, I don't like it, and that's going to get the most pushback.
And the 10,000 is the current zoning.
But we're also taking a few of the bugaboos, again, for lack of a better term, off of this by allowing it not to be rent-controlled, allowing you to go out and hunt for your own person a little bit easier, things like that.
Yeah, state fair market rent.
Any comments? Joe, you're the one who brought up square footage right off the get-go. Is there something?
Yeah, again, my concern remains with density. Living on a lot that's not much bigger than 10,000 square feet, and the lots around me, I have trouble with that being the minimum size. I would like it to be
You think
larger.
it should be bigger?
I think it should be larger.
Okay.
And having looked at other towns, the way that as they approach new changes in their ADU zoning bylaws, and several towns, I mentioned at our last meeting, Brewster is one that's going through a change now as well, and others. There are restrictions that it's primarily whatever is on the zoning regulations for this house lot size now. So our minimum now is 20, I think. Is it 20? Pretty sure.
Well, mostly.
Mostly
It
20.
depends where you are.
Depends, yeah.
It can be 40.
It can be high.
It can be 87.
Right, it can be, but the minimum, but the lowest is 20. And some towns are upwards of 40. Sandwich is at 40. Brewster, I think, might be at least at 20. Don't quote me on that, but I'm just recalling from memory. So again, my concern is one of density and shoehorning just because you can.
Doesn't mean you
An
should.
affordable dwelling unit, that you should, exactly right. So that's my concern about the 10,000.
Brad, you're correct.
Yeah, I think it's 25, yeah, 1 point.
So we have R25, R40, and R87.
Right. R87, I think, is out on Great Island. Well, we can go to 12.5, we can go to 15. We don't have to go in increments of 5, but I agree, I think 10,000 is a little small. The biggest kicker is going to be Board of Health, because they're the ones going to say, oh, you have enough septic flow. And again, to bring up Mark's comments when he sat there, the biggest problem he has, once people build one of the accessory units, they promise to take away a bedroom inside, and the town of Yarmouth goes in and they check it off, and the next thing you know, the bedroom's back. And so you've got extra waste problems going into the ground. And finally, to quote Terry, a number of years ago, we were talking about some zoning issues. He said, if and when we get sewer, all this is going to go away, so you're really going to have houses on top of each other because you're only restricting it by square footage. And so you got to be careful on this. When sewers make its way down Route 28, all these places are going to pop up and build as many bedrooms as they want.
Whatever size, lot we determine relative to 10,000 square foot or larger, what we're doing is creating a duplex lot.
Yep. legally.
We're creating an opportunity for a duplex lot. So, just following up on some of
Getting closer to the-
Joanne's comments, in some areas, it might be a lot closer than others based on the way the neighborhood was laid out. So I would be cautious of that as well.
I don't have a problem with 10,000 square feet, but I really don't have a real good feel for it either. And I would also, go along with, if we want to increase that, I wouldn't have a problem with that. Because I don't understand exactly.
I'm going to jump
How
in
many-
real quickly. We have a threshold of 10,000 square feet on all our new buildings in town, thanks to the commission. So if you want to picture the newest CVS or the newest Walgreens or whatever that's built, they're all 9,900 square feet, not counting the,
Station Inn is 14,000 square foot.
okay, thank you. Show off.
No,
All right,
I'm
let's
just
go.
saying.
They got credit for it.
Let's go with the former Sunoco station, now a drugstore, diagonally across from Town Hall, down next to the post office. That is 9,900 square feet, that building, not counting the parking lot. So that's almost the size of a lot here, that you could put another house and another accessory unit. And I'm thinking we should go a little bit bigger.
I wouldn't have a problem with that.
I wouldn't either. In our effort to create a situation to benefit the town and residents, I think we have to be careful of the impact, the possible impact relative to that
And
effort.
it does remain, correct me if I'm wrong, a special permit
Yeah.
through the zoning board of appeals. So you have that
And the Board of
kind
Health.
of, that protection in there as well. And the Board of Health is a good point.
Lee?
What,
Well, I'm just thinking about what the town is going to look like in 20 years, and what kind of problems are you creating? I'm thinking along the lines that one of these days we'll have a wastewater system, and there won't be an argument as far as health is concerned in that regard. And I just think in terms of maybe Yarmouth at this point, they need the housing for, workforce and other. And, but at the same time, we have a pretty dense system of housing right now. So when you say 10,000 square feet, you blanket the whole town, there's, greater than 10,000, there's 10,700 lots that could have two houses instead of one house on them, right?
Well, you've got 10,000 plus you've got 5, 7, you've got 18, close to 20,000 current lots that are 10,000 square feet or larger right now.
Does the town need to double the amount of housing?
I
Some
doubt
u-
very much if you're going to see that many people rushing to spend the money to add that
agree.
and go through the process of going to the zoning board of appeals to get a special permit. That's going to limit it to some degree.
Right, but I mean, I don't know, it just seems like we're dumbing down on the quality of the town by
Some
going
years,
down
some years back, a representative from the state came before the planning board from the Office of Weights and Measures. You probably remember this. And he told us at that particular time that Yarmouth has the highest density per square mile. I never forgot that. So if we're looking at a town, one town out of 15 towns that has the highest density per square mile, I think that should give us some consideration relative to what the possibilities are of this going forward. Now, I agree with you, special permit will look at all the issues and weigh it out, and hopefully we could probably get some more units out of it. But one of the things I mentioned to Karen, we were talking yesterday, And I saw an article in the paper relative to what Dennis is looking at for affordable housing. And under the affordable housing criteria, they're looking to add workforce housing. So, just a thought. I'm not pro or con, I'm just making a comment. Don't shake it.
Tom, I'd like to take exception to your comment about the Yarmouth having the largest density. When you take into account the number of wetlands that we have, the amount of lands that are already committed to resource protection, and our recreational and conservation lands, et cetera, I don't see how we can wind up being the most dense town on the Cape.
Residential density was what he was talking about. They
Yeah,
must have a
okay,
factor.
so basically what you're saying is it's a matter of how you define it. Whose ox is being gored?
Exactly.
Okay, and unfortunately, that does fly in the face of this consideration that we have in front of us. If sewers go in and it creates a building boom because you can put more than one unit now on a lot and not have to worry about the Board of Health restricting you, yeah, it opens up an awful lot of possibilities for even a higher density if you only confine it to those residential areas, et cetera. So I mean, by town, we don't have the we can't have the highest density, but by a restricted definition, yeah, I can understand it that way.
I'm going to ask everybody bring their magic number to the table at our next planning board meeting. I'm just going to move this along because we can keep going around and around on.
Is there any information that would be helpful to you?
There would be,
Thinking about this.
if we can get it. Is there a way to know how many zoning board of appeals permits have been issued
Yeah.
in the last couple of years?
Mary mentioned that.
Yeah, we have that number readily available. I don't have it on my head, but we can break it down family and affordable.
I'd be interested to know how
Okay.
many permits there.
It's very low.
Yeah.
I do remember that's very low.
But
It's
now,
not
but
as
now
many
it's
as you'd
rent
think.
controlled usually. So that
The
would be going
rent, the rent is, I mean, I think that the rent still stays affordable. It's mostly the lottery piece.
But I don't have to advertise in Boston and everywhere else.
Exactly.
In Chinese newspapers, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, I'm gonna skip over I think we're okay with 800 square feet, no larger than, and,
Sorry, if I may.
okay.
Again, there are, looking at some other best practices, there has been a ratio of 50% of the size of the building, the principal housing. That, but no larger than 50% of the size of the house that's on the property, and/or 800, whichever is, I'm not going to get it right,
No,
smaller,
it's the bigger, smaller.
larger.
Okay, just as I'm taking notes, no larger than 50% of the existing building or the
Yeah.
existing livable
It's
space?
a livable space.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're just suggesting a
I think that's what the
ratio.
language is that they've used. So I'd like to
But no less
suggest
than
that as
800.
homework.
Or 800 square
Or
feet,
800
whatever is
square feet.
smaller.
Yeah, so can we suggest that as homework too?
Yep, whatever is smaller. Okay. All right, thank you. Definition of a family, I'm going to stay away from that right now. It's just, it gets more complex every day. Care per nature will be approved, the decision of the
I
zoning
think
board of
it's-
appeals. Good, it leaves it open for the zoning board of appeals to tackle. All right. Moving on to,
I did have another one, a question, comment. Again, some best practices, I'm
Which
referring
number
to
are you
them. They may
which-
not be 407,
ADUs.
2-10, that the owner, that it has to be owner occupied. I don't know that we've discussed a lot about that. What if the owner rents the principal residence now and wants to add an affordable unit?
I think they're allowed to do that.
No, I think it's either or.
Wait, what was your question, Joanne?
The owner must
Neither
be
one,
in
but
one of
she's
the
saying you have to
buildings.
own the
Yes.
primary property.
You're saying,
No owner necessary.
okay, that's the difference. Joanne's suggesting that you don't need,
The principal
You-
owner does not need to live in one of the...
strike that
dwellings.
requirement.
In either location?
In either location.
No, I don't think that's a good
You're going
idea.
to turn into you're going right into a rental property, complete rental property. That's
What if someone rents their house, their whole house?
agreed, but at least I thought right now, he or she was moving into the accessory dwelling unit and allowing someone else to rent their larger place.
The owner of the property says, I can't live in my house anymore, I rent it, but I'm a fan of affordable housing, and I have a garage that I'd like to convert to affordable housing and help out.
And so he or she is not on the property anywhere.
We've just had a recent example of that granted by the ZBA here in town, where an owner lives two streets over, and the property they own has two dwelling units on it, and which had originally been restricted as one owner occupied, and that was removed recently.
Where,
But
do you
this-
recall where that was?
Yeah, right on Main Street.
Yeah.
This would be
I
by
remember
right,
that.
though, if we put it in here. It wouldn't have to go through ZBA to have that, get out of jail free card. Well, we can discuss it.
Okay, so
Maybe
the
that's a
appeal would be
compromise.
to ZBA,
Right.
and ZBA has said yes to this.
Agreed, but that's on a case-by-case basis. If we
Yeah,
put it in
that-
here, it'd be
Yeah, it would be
by
by
right.
right. Yeah, I understand.
That's under
But-
current regulation. It was granted it was granted now as an exception.
Right.
So, but this would allow it to be done all the time.
Do you recall, were there extra conditions placed relative to
No.
that? It was, okay.
Offhand, I don't recall the
I don't recall either.
any special consideration. I just don't think there were any.
Yep.
Yeah, they were perfectly usable dwelling units. And just they removed the restriction that one of them be owner occupied.
Okay.
So
Moving-
if I'm understanding this correctly, any one of these things we put in here, any one of these restrictions, 800, 50%, 10,000, 15,000, family, yes, got to be owner occupied, any one of those conditions can be overruled by the Board of Appeals with proper justification.
Yes.
And Tom, that was special permit.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Whatever, the-
And we'll confirm that for you,
It- it-
Joanne. My only question is it special permit or is it variance?
Variance, yeah.
What
I'd
is-
be
And I
curious
don't
as to
know.
why they thought that was okay, because he was only 2 blocks away?
whatever no, and I don't think that the closeness of the proximity of the owner had any bearing on that. It was just that it was their property. They wanted to remove the restriction from whatever conditions had been on the property before. And whether it was variance or a special permit, whatever those restrictions were, those were removed.
Okay. Let's move on to signage.
I did have a couple of others on this, I'm sorry. Homework that maybe we can look at. These are things I guess I thought about. Mobile homes. I got a mobile home, I'm going to move it onto my property.
Not
Is
allowed.
it somewhere, is it here, though? Did I miss it?
Oh, I don't know.
Mobile
I don't
homes are
think
only...
it's in the ADU. I have a mobile home, I want to move it onto my property and have it be an accessible dwelling unit. It's possible. And other towns, again, other towns specifically say no to that. They are specific, no. Anything that comes in on wheels and is put on a foundation, it doesn't matter, no. That is not considered an ADU. We are silent on it, I think.
I think it's in the use table of where,
So it's covered somewhere else. in a-
Yeah, so
I think it's under use tables.
mobile home in the use table is use A8. And it looks like it's no across the board.
Yeah, I didn't think it
Okay,
was
I'm
allowed.
sorry. Okay.
No, it's a good question.
Houseboats.
Houseboats.
Question.
This is the problem of living on the river. Tom wants to put a houseboat on his slip in the river.
It's possible. Tom, are you going to do
Seen
that?
some- Have you
What can I
seen
get for
some of
rent?
these houseboats?
What can I get for rent?
Better
Have you
view.
seen these houseboats? I want to live on them.
Yeah.
I don't blame you. But at what point do they come under the wherewithal of the Yarmouth Town Health Department if he or she is not using the land?
I don't know, but it could
It's
be,
a good
someone could come
question.
in maybe and say, I want it to be an accessory dwelling unit, it's attached to my dock, which is attached to the land.
Wouldn't necessarily have to be attached to the
We'll
dock.
follow
They could
up.
anchor out.
They could have a mooring.
Okay. Karen said,
I'm going to follow up with the building commissioner.
Oh, yeah. Call them up in Maine.
say
Well,
Tom
yeah,
wrote,
he hasn't gone yet.
This is the danger when the Red Sox aren't on. This is the danger when they're not on, I read. Not good. So I gotta start watching the Celtics.
okay. I'm afraid to move to signage, I'm just waiting.
Oh, I did have one more.
Of course you did.
We struck amnesty in whole. I guess because way back when we first did this in 2004, was it 2004 or 5? when we first had the first
407.4.5.
accessory dwelling unit,
Yep.
and we've struck amnesty in its entirety.
Well, it says it'll no longer be available after, because we're changing it back
Yeah, so I'm
around.
guessing it was way back when. Have we, I don't think we've talked about that.
We did not.
You can go on to signs.
But we've got the question on the zoning board of appeals, special permit or variance,
Boats.
the mobile homes, houseboats, and amnesty. Is that,
Well, the last sentence on the amnesty says the
Right.
bylaw will expire on or will no longer be available after July 1st, 2011.
That's why she struck it.
Yeah, but it was connected to the, I think, if I'm, it was connected to when we first created accessory dwelling units, that they allowed when they first,
Correct.
when it first went in as zoning, it had this provision that said,
Then it says
or
it's,
catch-up.
it went away in 2011. That's what it says.
Yeah, I understand that. Do we want to create a new amnesty period for someone who may have a dwelling unit now that they haven't declared? In the same way that we did it the first time, we allowed accessory dwelling units.
That means that they're not registering
They're not registered
with
now.
the Board of Health, because if you have a rental unit, you have to have a certificate,
Yeah.
you have to be inspected.
Yeah. So I don't, I guess my question is, having not been here, why was amnesty a good thing back then? And is it something we're just,
Because it was probably working in with the with accessory apartments. When you
I
ask
think
them
it,
on
I
board.
think it is because it was brandy new,
Yeah.
and we were
They
trying to
wanted a
encourage
means of
them to
controlling what was done.
legitimize.
Yeah,
and there might have been some out there that just hadn't come forward?
and they expected, yeah.
I mean, and they wouldn't have come forward because there was no provision to come forward before the bylaw existed.
With
And
the-
they would have been in trouble.
Right.
Yeah, with the amnesty, you can negotiate relative to how you're going to bring it up to code and get licensed accordingly.
Do you
And
want
permissions
to ask
accordingly.
Mark if we should maybe pencil in another amnesty period?
Okay.
Worst you
Happy
could
to.
say is, I don't have the manpower, or no, that'd be a good idea.
Yep. No, I'll run it through staff. I'll run it through Mary and Kathy and
Yeah.
Mark.
Oh, my. Okay. All right. Under signs, she's got a listing here of 5 items that she wants us to look at, that she made changes in red. First thing is EMCs. All right.
It's on page 3.
Yep, got it right here. Eliminates the LED gas pumper toppers and retains the white LED for gas pricing on the freestanding sign for gas stations only. Okay. Tom Barron, you brought us this from your zoning board of appeals items. Does that look good?
Yes, it does.
Okay. All right. Flipping the page to light emitting diodes, LEDs. Electronic device emits light when an electrical current is passed through it. We have to describe what an LED is? It's amazing. Okay. Yep. Sure that makes mustard, because that's legitimacy. Turning to page 7 of 16 is the next block of red and yellow. And there we go. Messaging centers. 303.3.2. She goes on to say, comments with Mary from the Yarmouth Chamber of Commerce, increases the area of electronic messaging portion of the sign from 24 to 28 square feet. The entire overall sign remains at 32 and includes an advertising emblem allowed per section 304.4.2.4. Okay, so it'll be a sponsored board, for lack of a better type. Okay. Is this okay with the board?
Okay with me.
Okay with me?
Yeah, looks good.
Karen, any comments? No. Does Kathy ever run these by you?
Yep.
Oh, good. All right. And then the rest of it is all basic number changes. Number changes, number changes, number changes. Okay. All right, bottom of page 12. Drive-through menu board. No change has been made to this section, although a request has been made to have the building department to measure the drive-through menu for the board at Dairy Queen. Okay. Did someone make that request? No?
I think I had mentioned the Dairy Queen
Example.
as an example.
Okay. Additional single, looks pretty cut and best. 66 square feet. Direct drive-through traffic orders to be placed and be screened to a view of the street. Okay.
So it sounds like you've already reviewed this.
Yes.
Yeah, 2 or 3 times.
I'm just looking to see if she's doing any changes.
No?
And then just the update to the big page itself.
In relation to
Temporary signs.
Yep. Temporary signs, I talked to Mary in the hallway yesterday. No, today.
Mary Vilbon?
Yeah. I don't know if she's going to bring something to us by the time town meeting rolls around or not, but she said she was going to be in contact with me, so stay tuned.
Okay.
All right.
And I know that Mary Vilbon has been, talking with Mark as well as Kathy about these issues. So I think that Kathy just characterizes it here that after numerous discussions, it's decided not to move forward. But if something's going to change, we'll find out.
Might. When is the warrant close?
I
Ballpark.
printed it out today,
Yeah.
and I don't remember.
Okay.
January,
January sometime.
beginning of January or middle.
All right. Let's move on to building height.
Piece of paper I didn't bring down.
Outdoor entertainment, we've discussed that. And Tom Barron, you brought up a question about the golf course. We dealt with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
Building height, this is not for livable space, but for use as in, not intended for human, good, okay. And off-site affordable units. Not dealing with that, are we? Did Mary give you any comments
You've
about
got the outdoor, what's your question?
Just the last one here, VCOD off-site affordable units. I didn't think we were going to
I
tackle
think
that.
and that's the,
It's difficult to,
it's a heavy lift, and we haven't vetted it.
No.
So there's no amendments proposed at this time.
move past it.
All right, stormwater. Here we go. F.
So the stormwater's broken into, and I don't, if you've already discussed these, feel free to cut me off. The first one, A, zoning bylaw. It's a small change that hasn't been made yet. We're trying to figure out where to make that change within the zoning bylaw. This is all based on the new stormwater regulations. Staff recently met kind of extensively with the consultant, got the laundry list of chores that we need to pursue, and that's one of them. The second item, B, general bylaw, Chapter 171. We've talked with council. Council has recommended there's a provision in the general bylaw, not the zoning bylaw, but in the general bylaw. It's a little bit duplicative. We've got it covered. We don't need it in the town bylaw, so the suggestion is to strike that piece. Item C is the general bylaw, Chapter 145 for stormwater management, and that will include, what did she say, that allows the Concom to amend the stormwater regulations, and that's something that the Conservation Commission will be taking up. So there's no, I think, no action needed by this board on those items. Kathy does say, later on the stormwater regulations are amended, but town staff and the planning board will have opportunity for input and comment. Further consideration of edits to the zoning bylaw related to stormwater may be considered for subsequent town meetings, but they're not needed at this time.
Anybody have any comments? Excuse me, provokes that. Anybody have any questions that you'd like Karen to write down before she gets them all going? Okay. I'm going to go home and write down houseboat. That's the first time I've ever heard that. That's novel, I have to admit. Thinking outside the box. It's good.
That's great.
All right. No laughing when you submit that question, too.
One of the most popular alternative housing options in the city of Seattle is the houseboats on
Same thing down in Chesapeake Bay, down in
lake,
Baltimore.
yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha.
That goes way back.
There you go.
It's been a long time.
Right, and the other one, Sleepless in Seattle.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, there we are.
Good job.
Okay, minutes of the planning board. I can call a motion and all that good stuff, but I can't vote on this. So minutes of the planning board meeting of October 17th. Did everybody review it?
Yep. I move we approve the minutes of October 17th, 2018.
Second.
Okay, we have a legal motion and a second. Do we have a quorum here? We do. Good. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. I abstain. So the vote.
I'm going to abstain.
You do as well. So we've got 402. Nice pickup. Okay. Board of Appeals and Agenda Decisions, they were emailed to us. That was nice. Committee updates. Miss Red Sox fan.
Capital budget is continuing its review, and we should have some recommendations for the FinCom on November 28th. We meet with FinCom on the 28th, and then sometime thereafter with the Board of Selectmen. And we are probably as oversubscribed as I've seen in all the years, 3 that I've done this. The needs of the town are pretty significant, so we're trying to create some alternative approaches, and hopefully we'll be successful in putting our best foot forward on some of these things.
Mr. Barron?
Other than regular housing committee actions, nothing special. But I, along with Joan, have been attending the Cape Housing Institute training sessions. Tomorrow will be the sixth and last of the current set. And this has been very, they've been very helpful, I think, overall. And if anything, I can have it as an impression from last year's training and this year's training is that more members of the boards, of the town boards, not just planning board, but planning and zoning and other people in the housing committee, the housing authority, everyone. The other people should be attending these sessions. They are good. It is good training, and there's a good purpose behind it to get more housing across the board for all needs within the Cape and certainly within our community.
Well stated. Lee?
We had a joint meeting with the three towns with regard to joint meeting with the three towns, the selectmen, the finance committees, and the water resource committee, and it was well attended. It was actually to hear about I think it's MFN. There's a regional wastewater system up north for the Mansfield, Foxborough, and Norton, and came off real well, and I think brought some understanding to some of the people that are big decision makers in the process. And still some questions, but it's all part of trying to get us to move forward with a regional agreement between the three towns, and it went well. We're also going to be, the water resources will be meeting again next week, the 13th, yeah.
Yikes. MFN is good, I like that.
The CEDC will be starting its tourism grant process beginning with the next meeting, which is a week from tomorrow at 5:30 here in the hearing room to kick it off, and then we go through the process through November, December. So that's mainly what we'll be doing for the next couple of months.
Community Preservation Committee met with some applicants this afternoon, just before this meeting, and one of them was the Riverwalk application, and it was well received. There was a lot of information that passed. It was a good presentation, and I believe the next meeting is the 19th.
I didn't hear that part of the conversation.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Because you couldn't meet next week.
Yeah.
Where are you meeting? Sorry, you couldn't meet next week, and you probably wanted to meet before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So that would be a Monday, right?
Yeah, I believe it is. But other than that,
It is.
we haven't met with the trust for a while, and that's it.
I think Monday, is next Monday that the drive-in site is having that meeting over at Bridgewater State.
That's right.
Next Monday is a holiday for some places, so just be careful.
No, but the 19th.
Oh, we said
so
next Monday.
CPC booked, they probably booked for 3 o'clock, but Norm is absolutely correct. So that's the drive-in site utilization committee meeting, and their next meeting is focusing, you're going to have a long day again, Tom, on the event planners coming in, and they've also extended the invite to staff as well as the CEDC, and it's looking not at the Riverwalk Park part of the project, but the event space. And they're trying to gauge what are the demands in terms of physical needs. Do they need electricity? Do they need water? Do they need Wi-Fi? Where, how, and so forth, from the event planners to kind of help
What day is this meeting?
look ahead for the site and use of the site. It's Monday the 19th.
We're here.
It's in, I don't have the room number
No, they
handy. It's room 2, I think it's room 202 at Bridgewater State is where that meeting will take place.
Where we've met before,
Yeah.
up on the left.
It's lovely meeting space.
Did you say 3 o'clock for that meeting?
No,
or-
the drive-in site meeting starts at 5:30.
5:30.
That's at 5:30, but Tom, they've just scheduled a community preservation committee for 3 o'clock that same day, and I'm guessing that would take place here.
Yikes. You guys, full calendars. Thank you all for volunteering and doing so much for the town. Board member items. A lot of you probably all going on vacation. Any vacations coming up next month?
No.
No, we just have to get through, like you said, closing the warrant and stuff. Correspondence, anything we missed?
Nothing if it's not in the packet.
Staff updates?
No updates. So we'll be meeting with, I think we're meeting with the Cape Cod Commission again, just following up. We're meeting, Kathy and I will meet with Sharon and hopefully Heather as well on the 16th, just to flush out any additional questions. Kathy has been combing the document. I think that what makes it hard for comments is that the comment period right now is really just for the regional policy plan, and some of these other things, like the placemaker map or the technical bulletins, those comments will be appropriate later, and we just don't know when yet. So,
Here we are. We need to-
Will there be a public meeting in regards to this coming together, the RPP?
well, so they've had their public meetings. They had 3 of them.
I mean, with us, coming to
With you. The next, so the comments are due on the 19th, on that Monday
Okay.
of November. So the planning board does not have another meeting scheduled before that. So if you did want to submit comment, we can either do that right now, or you can submit individually.
Yeah.
And we'll, and I'll take the comments. I think Kathy's memo did a good job
She did.
incorporating the comments that were made at the Board of Selectmen meeting. We'll see if we have new add-ons from this meeting, and I think we have a couple, and we'll roll them all up into one.
She did a real good job.
She does a real good job on everything,
You bet.
so.
We have a meeting on December 5th and December 19th, and that'll bring us to the conclusion of yet another fun-filled year. The Yarmouth Planning Board, Yarmouth, Massachusetts, and the Commonwealth therein. Okay. Call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Here we go.